Let's talk about the role of the foot in walking, because it's actually very unique. Even though we often talk about the foot being stable, it is stable when we're starting in a static position. But in walking, the foot is going through a tremendous amount of movement. And so if you look at the wear pattern on your shoes, the first thing you notice is that many of your shoes wear out on the outside of the shoe. Does that mean that we stand supinated? No, actually, most of us actually stand pronated, and I'll explain that reason in a different video. So when you're walking and you're getting ready for heel strike, as you're about to heel strike, your foot actually goes, and this foot doesn't move much, but your foot actually positions itself into a little bit of supination right before the heel strike. And if I go into supination, what it's going to do is as I heel strike, this bone, the calcaneus, is going to be what? As it makes contact, it inverts itself. So the bone actually moves itself around the front, comes around here towards the medial surface. We call that calcaneal inversion. And what that actually does is it moves all the bones of the feet closer together. Because as that bone inverts, it brings all the 26 bones of the feet closer together, making them more rigid. Because the reality is when you've got surfaces that are more congruent like this, they provide more stability than surfaces that are like this, where there's a lot more movement. So at the point of heel strike, we actually need the foot to be stable to accept load. And so we actually have that outside of the foot, and that's why your shoe tends to wear on the outside first. The moment we heel strike, the next thing that's going to happen is, if you subscribe to Newton's third law, it says for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. Well, we know that your body weight, and it's probably more than your body weight because your foot's being accelerated to the ground, you're going to have a reactive force coming back up. Now, I've used an analogy of bridges. Think of a bridge that's made up of steel linkages, where the linkages are very tight together, versus a suspension bridge. And let's say an earthquake hits. An earthquake is typified by having what we call a low frequency energy wave. So what's going to happen is going to create undulations. Well, this bridge that's very rigid is probably not going to be able to withstand much of that swaying. It may just snap, right? Whereas the suspension bridge is designed to absorb that energy. Well, in the human body, your skeleton is the steel bridge and your soft tissue is the suspension bridge. And just like the earthquake, when you hit the ground, that reactive force coming back up is a low frequency wave of energy, which means we don't want to absorb it into the bones. We want to absorb it into the soft tissue. And also the reason we want to absorb it into the soft tissue is like a rubber band. Anytime you stretch a rubber band, what follows right behind it is the release, where you can transfer that potential energy into kinetic energy, and that creates movement. That would be the foot propelling itself or propelling the body forward. So what we have is the foot going in the heel strike instant, going into inversion, stiffens up the feet, but then a fraction later the foot's going to do what? The ball of the foot's going to come down. We call that the load response, where we're going to start now doing what? Taking the load of the back foot and loading into the front foot. And so we need the calcaneus to do what? Move itself back out. So what your foot actually does, it goes from supination into a bit of pronation, and in doing that, all these bones kind of open up, and that's where the arches come in. So having that nice transverse arch, that nice medial longitudinal arch, they can all flatten, and they're doing what? They're the soft tissue absorbing all that energy. What do you think is going to happen right after that? We're going to release that energy, and that's going to help us propel from heel off into toe off and propelling forward. And your foot actually goes back into supination as we propel forward. So the foot actually is unique. It goes from being a rigid lever to a bit of a mobile adapter and back to being a rigid lever. And this idea of a rigid lever is pretty easy to experience. Next time you're in the gym and you're doing a standing calf raise, try and do what? Try and supinate your feet a little bit. So just kind of sit outside and just do your calf raise, and you'll notice it feels normal. Then try pronate, really collapse your feet inward and do the calf raise, where you're loading onto that first metatarsal head. And you notice it's very difficult to do the calf raise. You don't feel as strong. Why? Because when you're pronated over, the foot is not stable. It is more mobile. And therefore, you're weaker. It's not giving you a rigid platform to operate over.